Sometimes life takes you full circle, life and recruiting. And the Miami Hurricanes have another four-star wide receiver on the way. A familiar face has returned. Malachi Toney. Welcome back to the U.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It's Deja Vu. I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC, and writer for Canes County at Rivals. And thank you so much to the everydayers and every nighters, is that a thing? For making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New subscribers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. What a saga, and I'll try to explain what happened here. The Miami Hurricanes tonight have just landed a verbal commit from four-star American Heritage receiver, and he's a good one, folks, Malachi Toney. Yes, this is the same Malachi Toney who was previously committed to Miami, decommitted, reopened his recruitment. I want to say that was about a month ago, reopened his recruitment. There were, some reports that were linking him maybe to the Alabama Crimson Tide, but Malachi, as we talked about it a little bit last week, planned to, and he did attend the Miami versus Florida State game this past weekend, and we were getting some vibes that it was not over between Miami and Toney, despite the fact that he had previously decommitted, that Miami was still an option for him. And lo and behold, Toney has decided to keep his talents in South Florida, and he's going to be a Miami Hurricane. Now, something people need to understand, and again, I can't speak for Toney. I can't speak, for his family and anything that went into his decision process, but this question keeps getting asked of me. Why would he decommit from Miami and then recommit? Here's something you have to remember about Malachi Toney's process. He was previously a class of 2026 verbal commit to the University of Miami. And several weeks ago, he made the decision, and that's partially a decision because of how much butt he's kicking on the football field, but also how much butt he's kicking in the classroom, able to get his credits together where he's able to graduate a year early. So Toney, earlier in this school year, decided he was going to reclassify to the class of 2025. And I believe with that reclassification, it kind of blows up your recruiting board. New options come open. You probably want to reevaluate those options. So, when he decided to decommit, which turned out to be a temporary thing from Miami, I've got to believe that, to me, that decision and his ultimate decision to stay with Miami was probably facilitated with your situation changes, because you think about who you're coming in with, which players on Miami's current roster you'd be, playing with or playing behind on the depth chart next year. It completely opens up your board. If he wanted to do a responsible thing for him, take a step back, evaluate other options, because he'd be getting to college a year earlier. Ultimately, Malachi Toney decides that the University of Miami is the place for him. And I'm happy he ultimately came to that choice. I am not bothered whatsoever by him, decommitting temporarily and reopening his options. Because, folks, you have to remember, for these young men coming out of high school and for their families, this is one of the most important decisions you will ever make. A lot of us, who went to college, and I'm a University of Miami alumnus. I was not an athlete, didn't have the makings of a varsity athlete, as Junior Soprano used to say to Toney. But still, like for my academic career, for my social life and everything, I'm so proud of the decision that I made to attend the University of Miami. And for these players coming out of high school, it's not only like it was for me and so many of us, an academic decision and a social decision, a decision where you're going to be, living for 4+ years. It's also a decision of where you want to play football, which coaches you're comfortable with, which teammates you're comfortable with, where you think you can, blaze your trail to potentially, hopefully get into the National Football League someday. It's such a big decision. It's such a big, impactful decision. For a lot of young men, it's the biggest decision of their lives up to that point. Do not blame anyone for taking extra time and doing their due diligence to make that decision. So let's talk a little bit more about Malachi Toney. He's absolutely dangerous playing from the slot. He's about 5'11", 182 pounds, out of one of the high school powerhouses, American Heritage. He's rated as a 4-star recruit on the 24/7 composite. He's the 25th ranked wide receiver in the class of 2025, 32nd ranked overall player in the state of Florida, 213th overall ranked player in the entire country. I sent the bat signal out, not the Dennis Smith bat signal, the Donno bat signal out to my guy, Larry Bluestein. Now, Blue just joined me earlier today on an episode of Locked On Canes. I couldn't get him back tonight. He's doing other shows this evening, but I asked Blue for his Malachi Toney scouting report because I don't think anyone outside of maybe parents and coaching staff in American Heritage have watched as much Heritage football as Larry Bluestein has. And he said to me on Toney, different level football player who has shown he can play receiver and slot, defensive secondary, and on special teams, has a burst of speed, runs impressive routes, and has the opportunity to make an impact in year one. How about that? Make an impact in year one, also graduating high school a year early. So these are the types of players we need at Miami. And, man, winning that Florida State game, such a powerful recruiting tool, right? I mean, since that victory on Saturday night, Miami has landed one of the better players in the class of 2026 in Camden Portis. We talked about him this morning on Locked On Canes. Now Miami is able to re-land Malachi Toney. And so, all right, let's look at where Miami's recruiting class now ranks. By the way, landing Malachi Toney bumps Miami up a spot in the 24/7 Sports class of 2025 rankings. Miami moved from number 12 up to number 11. They just jumped ahead of the Oklahoma Sooners. So now Miami has committed Hilton Drake Stubbs, 4-star, borderline 5-star defensive back, safety out of Mandarin High School in Jacksonville. 4-star interior offensive lineman, S.J. Olofai-Tuli. And by the way, S.J. has, he's doubled down on his Miami Hurricanes commitment. Miami is doing a great job, hopefully getting this one over the finish line come December. Jabori Antoine, 4-star cornerback out of Louisiana. Remember, he chose Miami over LSU. 4-star wide receiver Joshua Moore, who Miami flipped from the Florida Gators recently. 4-star receiver Malachi Toney, who Miami has just gotten a recommitment from. 4-star defensive back Bryce Fitzgerald. 4-star running back Gerard Pringle. 4-star defensive back Chris Ewald Jr. By the way, let's get as many defensive backs in this class as we possibly can because we want to revolutionize that defensive backfield for years to come. 4-star linebacker Gavin Nix. 4-star tight end Brock Schott. 4-star quarterback Luke Nickel. 4-star edge rusher Herbert Scroggins. 4-star tight end Luca Gilbert. Miami's got 2 4-star tight ends in this class. One of my favorite recruits in this class is 4-star interior offensive lineman Max Buchanan. That guy is a dog, and that guy is a leader of men. I cannot wait to watch and cover Max Buchanan once he arrives at Miami. 4-star defensive back Amari Wallace. Miami is staying in tune with him. I know he's coming off a serious injury he suffered in high school this year. Miami Hurricanes are committed to seeing him get better and dominate on the field someday, hopefully soon. 4-star wide receiver Dalen Upshaw. 3-star linebacker Ezekiel Marcelin. 3-star cornerback Timothy Merritt. 3-star defensive lineman Dante Simpson. 3-star edge rusher Micah Newton. 3-star offensive tackle Demetrius Campbell. 3-star offensive lineman TK Mew. And 3-star offensive lineman Jaden Wilkerson. So Miami now has 23 class of 2025 commits, with Malachi Toney becoming the latest of those. And folks, we're not nearly done yet on this extra episode, bonus episode of Locked On Canes. Guys, we are going to have a sit down, and I'm so excited. I covered this young man when he played at the University of Miami. I am so excited to talk with former Miami Hurricanes offensive lineman KC McDermott. Now, KC, he's part of a new show with my good pal Josh Darrow, Built on Green Tree podcast. I highly recommend. KC gives awesome insights. Darrow is the freaking man, and I want to get deep inside Miami's offensive line play. of course, what it was like when KC was playing, back in the Mark Richt era, what he's seeing from Miami's offensive line, the renaissance in the running attack. Can we protect Cam Ward a little bit better than we did this past weekend? We'll talk about the Duke game coming up. So KC McDermott is going to join us next. Folks, we're only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. I'm only getting started with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. I've checked the odds. Miami Hurricanes are favored by 20.5 points against the Duke Blue Devils at home this weekend. Let's go out there and get that dub. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more right on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We probably haven't talked enough offensive line this season. Like, I feel like we're always talking about the D-line. We're always talking about Cam Ward. Been talking, so much about the running game lately, but the running game wouldn't be humming like it is these last couple of weeks if not for the guys up front. Our guest on this episode, played offensive line at the University of Miami. I'm sure you guys remember him. You remember his brother as well. KC McDermott is with us. KC, thank you so much for being here. And first of all, we just watched the team beat Florida State a couple nights ago, which always brings a smile to my face. Are you still enjoying that?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Donno. And listen, I love anytime we beat up on Florida State and when we're state champs. First time being state champs in a very long time. I'm super excited, man.
Yeah, and there's another avenue I'd like to take you down because we just earlier tonight, Miami, they're keeping us busy with the recruiting news, right? I mean, last night it was Camden Portis, Miami lands the legacy for 2026, and then today it comes full circle with Malachi Toney, who was committed, but then he reclassified, wanted to open up his options. He ends up recommitting to Miami. I'd love to hear from your perspective, KC, what the recruiting process was like for you. I know you had a brother playing for the Canes, but like what was it that ultimately drew you to the University of Miami?
I mean, what drew me to Miami was I was a Miami fan. I mean, I grew up in South Florida in Palm Beach County, and my dad always every Saturday had Miami on the TV. They moved from Ohio during the 80s, during the height of the Miami era. And, it's just something we always rooted for Miami. I would say my recruiting process is actually a little bit more interesting because I had two older brothers, and my last two schools were Miami and Notre Dame. And my oldest brother was a GA at Notre Dame. So
Right.
Everyone was like kind of pinning, is it brother versus brother or what the situation was. Quite honestly, Notre Dame just fell out when I went there in April and saw snow on the ground. So that's what ultimately left Notre Dame out at the end. But I was always a Cane. My bedroom growing up was orange and green, all that stuff. I mean, I couldn't imagine going anywhere else besides Miami.
Well, I'm happy that worked out for you. And we watch the offensive line these days, and first of all, it must make you happy. You love playing physical up front. It's been really a renaissance for the running game these past couple of weeks. 219 rushing yards against Louisville, 230 against Florida State. I know people, give a lot of credit, obviously, to Damian Martinez and Mark Fletcher, but those holes don't make themselves, Casey.
No, they don't. And you can have a good run game without a good offensive line. And that's something that all the fans at the beginning of the year were kind of like questioning, like, oh, where's our run game? Where's our run game? The run game was there. I think it just took time for Damian to get used to the scheme. And Mark is Mark. I mean, I think he's a great running back. Every time he touched the ball, he's getting 4.5, 5 yards a carry. So I think it was more just a timing issue. Plus, I think what we do really good on offense this year is we attack the defense the way they allow us to attack them. So Florida State, You know, I have a couple buddies of mine who are like, dang, I don't know, Cam didn't really play that well. I thought Cam played great. Florida State dared us to run the football, and we ran the football down our throats, and that's something that we can build upon. And no matter what happens throughout the rest of the season, we can lean on either side of the ball. You know, do we need Cam to be Superman some games? Yeah, but we can also lean on our 3-4 man backfield that we have that we can exploit defenses on the ground with as well.
Yeah, you watch the trench play with a trained eye that most of us do not possess. So for as good as the running game has been the past couple of weeks, we've seen Cam, and it happened against a good Florida State defensive line. You know, he was sacked a handful of times. There were, you know, probably a few too many pressures. What did you see from the pass protection in that game, and what can they do to bounce back?
I just saw a lot of confusing fronts, which is what's Manny's going to throw at us this week. Just a
Yeah.
bunch of different fronts they may not have been expecting, may not see all on film. I would say protection got better as the game went on. You know, they go on the sideline, look at the iPad, and Mirabal can kind of coach them up on what to do. Uh, I think the way that Francis went about that take two situation when they brought 6 against 5, that's a tough position as a tackle. There's different techniques and ways to handle it, and that's what Mirabal's for. I'll let him handle that. But you know, I've been very impressed with this offensive line so far in pass protection this year. And I was at the Florida game, and the way they protected Cam at that game was unbelievable. And you don't come back from 25 points down against Cal if you don't have great protection. So they've definitely done a really good job. Little hiccup during Florida State. Also, probably the best, most talented defensive line and linebackers that they've faced this year. So that will carry over, and they'll learn from it. And I'm sure this next week they'll be a lot better.
I'd love your insight on some of the players on Miami's offensive line, because someone who I'm going to enjoy watching him for the rest of this season and next year. I don't know if he'll still be in college 2 years from now, and that's KC McDermott, who is just really, I mean, he had a really good freshman season last year. KC, he's been a mauler so far this year. I'm not sure, they might have credited him with a sack given up against Florida State. I'm not sure if they did, but prior to that game, he had a clean slate of no sacks given up all season long. What do you see on film and in games from KC?
He's just a stout offensive lineman. He's thick and he's strong, and he just throws people around like they're rag dolls, and it's fun to watch. He's got good base, good arms, good hands. He's able to move his feet. I've seen multitude of defensive ends try to do spin moves or cross chops or whatever it is they try to do with their hands to get his hands off them. And he's just so strong in his core and in his legs that he's able to recover, even if he does get in a position that may get him off kilter. But he's able to recover really quick, and it's awesome to watch.
You know, something that we've seen a little bit of this year since Jalen Rivers has been back. Sometimes they'll kick, and Rivers has played all over the line over the past few years, but sometimes they'll put him inside at guard, keep Markel Bell out at tackle, and I always, whenever I'm able to watch a practice, I know Mirabal is really big on cross training his guys everywhere. And we got a question from one of our Locked On Canes insiders that would like to know from you, KC, the benefits from cross training, and how much did you guys cross train when you were at Miami?
Oh, we cross trained all the time. I mean, during pre-practice, I played left tackle most of my career at Miami. I also played a little bit of guard. At pre-practice, I was doing center stuff. I was doing quarterback center exchange. I think it's the most valuable thing for an offensive lineman to not specialize in just one position. I think it's very good to be able to work and being able to plug and play. I mean, you just never know, especially in the NFL. I mean, sometimes you're only dressing 7, 8 offensive linemen on game day, and those 3 backups have to be able to play all 5 positions. So that's something that if you start learning it earlier on in your career, the better you are playing it in the future. I love that they're doing it. I love that they're giving Markel Bell the opportunity to continue to play. He has earned it. He played very well in place of Jalen Rivers. Is he replacing Jalen Rivers? No. but he definitely, as Mario has said multiple times, has earned his keep. He's earned his right to playing time. So I love that they're doing it, and I think it's only going to help Jalen Rivers' draft stock. The fact that they're putting guard tape out there for him. Uh, a lot of times in the NFL, we're taking these big time college tackles in their first couple of years, putting them in a guard before we slide them back outside. So I only think this is going to help him in his career moving forward.
After Miami's offensive line last year, there were some, concerns about how do you replace Matt Lee, who had such a good season at center a year ago. Miami transfers in Zach Carpenter from Indiana, and he's been really good in my opinion. What's been your opinion on Zach Carpenter and maybe how he's a little different from Lee, but very effective nonetheless?
Absolutely, and he is the ultimate leader from what I hear and what I've seen on the field. You don't really see college centers communicate the way that he communicates throughout the game. His hands are out there. He's pointing out Mike linebackers. He's pointing out blitzes. I heard Mario today during his presser give a shout out to him for being able to identify certain blitzes coming before they happen by reading the back end of the defense. Those are all the things you see in NFL centers, and it's awesome to see it up front in college level for him. And his technique is very good. He's very good at getting his hands inside, driving the feet on contact. I mean, I'm working on putting a clip together, but there's probably 12, 13 plays so far this year where he is driving his feet and burying dudes 5-6 yards down the field, which is what you want. You want a guy who's got a little chip on his shoulder, maybe a little messed up in the head, to lead your offensive line, because those are the type of guys that are going to bring the guys with them. Also, I think Darrow told me a story about when they were at Cal. He just looked at everybody, calm, cool, collected, didn't freak out, didn't start yelling. It was just like, hey, listen, guys, like this is our game. Let's just keep going, keep plugging away, keep chipping away. And that's exactly what they did. And it's for someone who's only been at Miami for a short amount of time to take a leadership role like that and to be in such command of the offense tells me how smart he is, how great of a leader he is. And it's just, that's the best part of our offensive line, is having a great center.
Most of us, when we watch games, we're kind of watching the ball first. When you're watching a game, are your eyes more on the line of scrimmage and the ball is secondary?
Yeah, no, that's exactly how it is. It's funny. I was at the Florida game, and I was there with my wife, and behind us were a couple of alumni guys, and this guy introduced himself. I can't remember his name, but he played offensive line in the late 90s, and he was like, hey, have you gotten used to watching civilized football? And I was like, no, I haven't. Every single play, I'm looking at the offensive line. I remember a couple weeks after I retired from the NFL, I went to a Jaguars game, and again, looking at my wife and my brother-in-law going, oh, that's a run play before the play even started. It's like, oh, that's a pass play. It's just looking at it and seeing the guy's stance, and you play with those guys, so you know their little flaws that they have that they claim to hide, but they can't. So it's the same thing. I have a hard time enjoying a football game, just sitting there and watching it for what it is. I sit there and I analyze the offensive line the full time. Which makes it fun for me because, now we're entering in this podcast world, and just breaking down players and helping them get better day by day and trying to give any advice I can.
I love it. And we're going to talk in a bit more about KC's new pod venture, and he's working with one of my favorite people, Josh Darrow. They've teamed up on the Built on Green Tree podcast. But like talking about that O-line play is why I was so excited to get you on Locked On Canes, because for me, like when I quote unquote evaluate O-line play, it's usually if somebody gives up a sack, I'll watch the play to see how that developed. If somebody makes a crazy block in the running game, I'll take time for that, or I'll check the Pro Football Focus grades, which we all know are flawed, but you take it all with a grain of salt. But to be able to talk to somebody who's watching the O-line first, it's really valuable. And guys, we're going to keep the conversation rolling. We got some questions from our Locked On Canes insiders for KC McDermott. We're going to keep it rolling right here. We're not done yet on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. You guys want to keep it locked. I'm certainly not done with the Game Time app. This is the only ticket app that I use, and we're going to be getting the best prices this week on the Duke Blue Devils at the Miami Hurricanes. Let's pack the rock at 12 noon this week, guys. The Game Time app has a new feature called Game Time Picks, which makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Guys, Game Time has so many great features, not just Game Time Picks. I love the all-in pricing feature. Turn that on, and it's going to show you the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. Get a panoramic view from your seat in the Game Time app before you buy. And Game Time has the lowest price guarantee. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So you have nothing to lose. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use our code LOCKEDONCollege, and they'll give you $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem our code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch today. We are blessed to have KC McDermott, former University of Miami offensive lineman, co-host of Built on Green Tree, with us here on Locked On Canes. Now, KC, you talked about how, when you were coming out of high school, it was all Miami, but, Notre Dame may be in the picture for family reasons. How sweet was it to get that dub against the Crying Irish in 2017?
That was awesome. And my brother had a little bad taste in his mouth leaving Notre Dame after he got out of coaching, and he kind of helped us out a little bit, gave us some tips on the defensive linemen because he coached them personally. So he can. That's one thing that going into that game, everyone was talking about their offensive line and how great they were. And we were like, we're so sick and tired of hearing this. We're going to show them who the better offensive line is. And we played probably the best game of the season up front that game. Travis Homer, DJ Dallas, and we're tearing it up in the run game. And Malik was just throwing darts that game at quarterback. And, everybody was I always tell the story about the locker room beforehand is I used to take those smelling salts, and they're about one of them's pretty powerful. But I would get a small Gatorade bottle. I would drink it or empty it out, and I'd pack it full of these smelling salts, and I would put it in, I'd cap it, and I'd leave it in my locker during warm-ups. So we would go through the whole warm-up routine, come back in the locker room, and that thing would ferment a little bit, and we would just pass it. And it used to just be an offensive line thing, but that night, everybody wanted it. Everybody wanted a little extra juice going into their nostrils. So we were passing that thing around the locker room, and Mark came in and gave us that speech about, hey, we've beat every single team that beat us last year. This is the one more. And that just struck us because none of us thought of it that way. None of us were like, oh, this is the one team we lost to last year that we haven't beat yet. And it just hit a different chord with us. It was just like, oh, okay, this is over. Plus them standing on the U in the middle of the stadium pregame in their nice suit and ties, little proper Irishmen. That really, again, struck another chord with us. So that we were out for blood that night, and man, we got it. It was awesome.
Yeah, and of course, the Miami team of this year, 2024, is it's the best, probably the best team since that one. I mean, no one else has started 8-0 since that time. That was the last 10-win team Miami had. I mean, is there any comparison? Like, how do you look at these two teams? Your 2017 team compared to 2024. Who do you think would win if they went head to head?
I'm going to have to give the upper hand to this team. I love Malik. Malik was a gamer. You put Malik in a game, he's going to try and win that game and find a way to do it. But Cam is just a whole different level. And I think Malik knows that. This offensive line has more talent than we did. Their defensive line, that's comparable. You could argue about which defensive line was better. Linebacking core, same. That's defense overall. I think we had a better secondary, but we also were a very experienced secondary. We had guys in their third and fourth year, and the depth of this team this year is not comparable to what we had. We didn't have great depth. They have really, really good depth.
Another question we got from a Locked On Canes insider. I think this is a good one because I can't answer this question. KC McDermott certainly can. What sort of communication is there between offensive linemen during a live play? They ask. For example, if the defense runs a specialized blitz package, or guys communicating with each other to pick it up. Like, talk us through how that goes on an O-line, KC.
It usually starts with the center up front, but the center needs to rely on his guards and tackles as well. There's a reason why we put guards and tackles in 2-point stances in passing situations, and it's so that they can see the back end of the defense as well. Maybe look over at the slot. It's kind of, centers sometimes are covered up, so you need the extra hands, eyes, and ears to point things out. So it starts with the center up front, whether it's getting the mic point out and then calling the protection. Even in run game, calling the run combos or whatever you need to do, and then it just fans out both ways. And then during a play, it's not a lot of communication because you're usually straining really hard. But when they run a twist or a TE, which is a tackle and a defensive end stunt, the guard and the tackle need to be saying, "Go, go, go! Hey, wait, wait, wait!" That you got to be able to communicate that something's happening. Oftentimes, if in the NFL, you'll catch it more often than not because they have the mics on the centers up there at that level. But you'll hear the random just like go, like it's just like a scream of some sort to try and get the guard off, or the tackles are communicating, doing the same thing. So it's not a ton during the play, but before the play, there's a lot of communication going on, making sure you're all on the same page. Because again, it's the largest unit on the field, not just in body size, but in numbers. You always have 5 of you on the field. So all 5 of you need to be on the same page. And it starts with the center up front.
You played in practice against Manny Diaz defenses at Miami. Hurricanes are going to be going up against Diaz's Duke Blue Devils this Saturday. Any tips that Miami's offense should know and what fans should expect?
Watch a lot of blitz tape this week. A lot of it. Manny may have evolved from this. I do know that later in the 2017 season during practice, because we always had at least 2 to 3 periods of practice against the number 1 defense, and we had to pick up their blitzes, particularly in 3-minute or third down and 2-minute situations during practice. And we kind of figured out that if he's mugging linebackers to one side, the blitz is coming from the opposite way. So again, he may have evolved. I haven't really watched a lot of the Duke defense this year. I'll probably pop on a little tape and take a peek at it throughout the week to see what might be different, what might not be. But yeah, you watch a lot of tape, you'll be able to break down a defensive coaching staff pretty quickly and what their tendencies are. I do know that they're going to bring out a heck of a blitz package on 2nd and long and 3rd down. So you just got to be ready for it. Those are the 2 downs that you got to be ready for it. A lot of movement in the front on run downs. So we're going to have our work cut out for us on the front as far as being sure that we're on the same page and making the right calls. Talent-wise, this should not be as tough of a game like we just faced. I mean, those defensive linemen at Florida State, while they're having a down year, they're still NFL caliber defensive linemen. So, these guys are going to be moving. They're going to try and find different ways to beat you other than man-to-man. So
fair enough. Well said. And guys, by the way, I'm happy that KC McDermott is now in the podcast space, and there's a lot of really good shows out there, not just this one. And I know that I'm sure we have viewers and listeners in common with Built on Green Tree, and I highly recommend it. Let fans know, KC, what they can expect. It's a relatively new pod you've been doing, where they can find it, when they can find it, and what kind of analysis they can get on Built on Green Tree.
Yeah, Built on Green Tree is a former player podcast. So this is me, Rod Mack, Chad Wilson, and Josh Dara, who's on the radio team down there for the Miami Hurricanes. And, we release an episode usually every Tuesday morning, and it's straight analysis of the game. So it's from former players' perspectives of what happened during the game, what we could have done better, what we saw that was really great. It's definitely more informative than it is opinionated. So we're going to give you the straight up honest truth of what we saw on the screen. And we're not going to sit here and bash the team or bash the players or the coaches staff. That's not what we're here to do. We're here to give you guys more knowledge on what the game is like and what you're looking out for in run game, for me specifically, pass protection. And then Rod and Chad handle the defensive side really well. More insightful. It's really insightful. I know there's a lot of people that I've talked to who have listened to our podcast who are like, man, I look at the game a lot differently now. I mean, you brought up earlier, like, hey, sacks, like, not every sack is on the offensive line. I don't think a lot of fans actually know that. So there's definitely a lot that we point out that can help people understand the game better. And we're going to talk about Miami football, and what better way to do it than from 3 former Miami Hurricanes who've been there.
Yeah, you guys do a great job. I encourage people to check that out. And KC, thank you for sharing your perspective and insight with us. You guys want to make sure you follow him on X at KC McDermott 52. I am Alex Donno. And again, welcome back to the Malachi Toney. We will talk to everyone again tomorrow on another episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.